Renee Carter from AdoptChange. Thanks for speaking with Flow News 24. The data that has come out today from the Institute of Health and Welfare regarding adoptions, what's your organisation's first reaction to that?
Well, we're glad that there's an upward trend. So we've seen 20% increase over the last 4 years, which is good. It was at its lowest, so that's a positive thing. And also the fact that the adoptions from foster care are the largest portion of that, and they're increasing. So that's definitely a positive as well.
Yeah, I think the Institute's report indicated that maybe New South Wales is making better progress in that direction than other states. Is that correct?
Look, absolutely. So there were 171 adoptions last year by foster carers. Only 2 of those took place outside of New South Wales, so 169 in New South Wales. So clearly it's just not taking place in the other states, even though legislation allows for it.
Yeah, that's very interesting because we've been in contact with the South Australian Minister's Office. They had one, I think, of that one local adoption altogether, and we're just trying to explore with them why that might be the case. They said, it's been that way for a very long time. But your comments are very interesting there because you're suggesting New South Wales maybe has, could I paraphrase it, a Rolls-Royce model compared to what, in terms of implementation compared to other states?
Well, look, they've certainly put action in place in regards to prioritising permanency. So all of the states and territories in 2016 made a commitment to it for the kids in out-of-home care. So there's 45,000 across Australia, and many of them don't return home to their family of origin, and so they are in the system. So there's been a prioritisation to really provide them with that permanency, and adoption is supposed to be one of those options for a home for life. So when we see only 2 across the other states, then there's clearly a real disconnect there, and New South Wales is actually pursuing it.
So I want to come back to that in a moment, but can we just touch on this international adoption scenario, which has been highlighted in the report and some of the coverage already? It's historic lows according to the data. Is there a focus for your organisation that you are focusing more towards Australian adoption, and that as much as international adoption has gone down, that's kind of a societal trend rather than anything you're concerned about?
It's definitely a global trend, and the trend has been around there being a focus in each country on looking at how do we keep children within their culture, within their own country, and care options there. So that's definitely been a global trend. It doesn't mean that our opportunities for kids that aren't able to find those homes, that we shouldn't have more opportunities here. I think we definitely would like to see that when that's appropriate. However, it is, as I mentioned, in line with the global trends, but also last year was impacted by COVID and travel restrictions as well.
Do you think overall the numbers in the last generation, if I can call that, the last decade or two, do you think they're impacted also by advances in fertility treatment?
Look, possibly, although we do hear from a lot of people that are wanting to adopt and would like to pursue that as an option. It's more to do with that it's just not a reality in Australia. So, 334 is a good number, but it is still a small number. So really, I think what we need to do is make sure that it is a viable option for people and a positive option when it's appropriate.
So with these domestically Australian adoptions and these known child adoptions, as they're called, you're possibly not having this long wait like you do with an international adoption. The figures now say it's down to 2 years and 9 months for an international adoption, which is a lot shorter than it used to be. But theoretically, you're not waiting for contact with that child as long as you're in a known child scenario, because in many cases, I think the stats show you're already a carer for that child.
Yes, that's right. So the process itself may still be quite a while. However, yes, as you say, that child is living with you. And look, I think really it's about finding out, if it's something that someone does want to look at pursuing and thinks they can provide a home for a child, it's looking into those options in your local area and finding out more about what the needs are there. So, there's a small number of local adoptions across Australia, so there where an adoption plan is made for an infant, and then, as you know, there's a small number of inter-country adoptions as well. So, definitely think the community that's wanting to pursue that should be putting their hand up and finding out more and continuing to express that, we do actually have homes available for kids that need them.
Yeah, so the known child trend in this report, the data shows it's moving upwards, and New South Wales kind of doing the heavy lifting, if you like, at the moment, but it's still a long way short of the adoption numbers that we saw maybe a generation ago. Where does AdoptChange's advocacy centre on when it comes to, say, these known child adoptions? What reforms are you looking for?
Well, really, we're saying absolutely all supports need to be in place for family of origin to try and keep as many children at home safely as possible. What we know is, though, that some children will never be able to return home, and so our advocacy in that space is that for those children, and adoption needs to be one of the options on the table for them, particularly when, you might have a young person that's voicing that that's the option that they want for themselves as well. So we need to make sure that's a pathway for those children, because permanency is a really important part of their upbringing.
And this is just on the final point that you've picked up on there a bit about the voice of the child and what they're wanting. The big trend and what the report shows is that a generation ago and before that there would have been what we now call closed adoptions, whereas now they're very much open adoptions is pretty much what's favoured in most cases. Can you just speak to what that change now means, and for people who might be listening and thinking about adoption, what open adoption might look like?
So we don't have the secrecy anymore. So a child in care knows and is connected with their family of origin, and we'll still have relationships, for example, with siblings, family members, and that's a really important connection for them. Much healthier outcomes for those children as well. So that's the openness there and keeping that relationship. So it's not about cutting off those ties. It's really about providing a stable home for them. So
yeah, and that's really so important to have that stability and certainty for the child about what their future arrangement's going to be like for the rest of their childhood.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at what those scenarios look like, if you imagine a young boy, age 9, and he's already lived in 10 homes, can we actually fathom what that must be like for a child who doesn't have that certainty of where am I going to be staying tomorrow? Someone that, turns 18 a few weeks before their HSC and then is kicked out, compared to someone that knows that this is their family for life. So, behind all of these statistics are children and young people that have already been through too much in their early life, and it's about providing them with as much stability as possible in a situation that was already really difficult for them.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, Renee, thank you for speaking with us today and for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks,